Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a bit of a sanity check. You know that feeling when someone asks, "So what's parenting?" Or "What does it mean to be a caregiver?"
The elevator pitch version?
Exactly. And my brain, at least, it just defaults to a list.
Yeah.
A really long, exhausting list of verbs: driving, feeding, scolding, soothing.
Negotiating with terrorists over broccoli.
Right, doing laundry. It's all about the doing. That's how we measure it.
Yeah, that's the job description we give ourselves.
But today, we're looking at a source that basically says, throw that entire list out. Because if you think care is just a set of actions, you are missing the entire picture.
And you're probably making yourself miserable in the process.
Exactly. We are digging into a standalone essay simply titled Care by the writer and philosopher Pedro Malha. And I have to say, this isn't your typical, 5 steps to better parenting article. This is, well, it's architectural.
That is the perfect word for it. Malha isn't interested in logistics. He doesn't care about sleep training or screen time limits. He's interested in the ontology of care. What is it, really?
And his big idea is that care isn't an action you perform. It's a condition you live inside.
A condition, yeah. He describes it as a field that surrounds a life. It's atmospheric.
He has that incredible line right near the beginning, he says. Care is a way time behaves when another life depends on yours.
A way time behaves.
Yeah, let's pause on that for a second, because that hit me hard. Before this, I would have said care is me spending my time on my kids.
Yeah.
But he's saying the actual, texture of time changes.
It does. Think about it. When you're responsible for a vulnerable life, a child, an elderly parent time isn't your own linear thing anymore.
Right.
It gets interrupted. It becomes cyclical. It becomes shared. You stop living in me time, and you start living in we time whether you want to or not.
It's like the gravity in the room shifts. And what's fascinating is Malha points out this shift happens before you even really agree to it.
Oh, completely. It's biological. It begins before language, before confidence, definitely before choice. He points out that a child arrives with a need that is, it's absolute.
This is the part that felt a little bit like a thriller movie to me. The stakes are just so high.
They are. A newborn can't wait. They can't hold themselves steady. Their need arrives with this urgency and without any explanation.
It's not a request.
It is not a request. He writes, something is required, so it is given. And this leads to one of his most important and frankly liberating distinctions. Care is not primarily a moral position.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to push back on that.
Yeah.
We spend so much time telling ourselves we do this because we love them, because we're good parents.
Of course.
Is he saying morality has nothing to do with it?
Not nothing. But he argues that morality is the story we tell ourselves after the fact. In the rawest sense, care steps in because there is simply no alternative.
So you don't feed the baby at 3 a.m. because you're a saint?
You do it because if you don't, the baby screams. The structure of the situation demands it.
That's actually incredibly validating. Because if it's all about being a moral saint, then every time you're tired or resentful, you feel like a moral failure.
Precisely. If care is a virtue, then exhaustion feels like a sin. But if care is a structure like gravity, then exhaustion is just physics. It's the natural result of holding a heavy weight.
Gravity doesn't care if you're in a good mood. It just pulls.
Exactly. And this leads to what he calls the background hum. This is that architecture we were talking about.
The background hum. I feel like every parent listening just nodded their head.
It's the idea that care exists no matter what's actually happening. It's there when the house is loud and chaotic, sure. But it's also there when the house is dead quiet, when everyone is asleep.
See, this is the disconnect for people who haven't been in that position. They see a parent on a couch, kids are in bed, and they think, oh, you're off duty. Relaxing.
But Malha argues the body is never fully off duty. The tasks, the visible stuff, that's just the surface. Underneath is a continuous state of readiness.
It reminds me of, when you have a tab open on your computer that's playing music, but you can't find the tab?
Right.
And even if you aren't listening, your computer's fan is spinning, the battery is draining, a process is running in the background.
That is a perfect analogy. He says your rest is lighter, thinner. It's shaped by the possibility of interruption. You aren't just sleeping, you're sleeping towards a potential cry.
You aren't just reading a book, you're reading with one ear cocked for a thud upstairs.
It's the lack of an off switch. And that explains so much about that specific type of fatigue. It's not, I lifted heavy things today. It's, my operating system hasn't rebooted in 4 years.
Malha calls this the sustained openness to another person's vulnerability.
Which sounds beautiful and poetic, But in practice, it is biologically expensive.
It's terrifying.
Mm,
Sustained openness basically means constant vulnerability to disaster.
it kind of does. To care for a child is to live with the constant knowledge that something could go wrong, that something might be needed. He explains that this knowledge settles into the nervous system.
So it's not a thought you have, it's a biological setting. Your whole body is calibrated to scan.
You're essentially a high-end security system that never gets to go into sleep mode. And that scanning isn't just about right now. This is where the time distortion comes back. Mala says care lives ahead of the moment.
You're simulating the next 5 minutes, the next hour.
You are. He has that amazing phrase.
Oh, I wrote it down. Parents live with tomorrow folded into today.
Yes, that's the one.
It's such a trippy concept, but it's so real. I'll be at the park, my kids playing, but I'm not just watching them. I'm looking at the dog off leash 50 yards away. I'm thinking about if we have snacks for the car ride home, because if not, the meltdown hits at 5:30.
You're carrying time in multiple directions. Physically present, but mentally, you're scouting the future to clear the path.
It creates that parent brain fog. We usually apologize for it. Sorry, I'm so scattered.
But Mala flips that. He suggests this isn't a deficit, it's actually a form of high-level intelligence.
Okay, tell me more about that. Because when I walk into a room and forget why I'm there, I do not feel like a genius.
Think about what that scanning requires. It trains your perception. Over years, a caregiver learns to notice the smallest changes, a tiny shift in mood, a slight change in breathing, a risk that nobody else would see.
It's a form of pattern recognition.
A very advanced one. It's like being an air traffic controller. You're tracking 12 different blips, predicting trajectories and preventing collisions, all while appearing to just stand there drinking coffee.
He calls it quiet expertise.
And the tragedy is that this expertise can't be certified. You can't put it on a resume. Expert at sensing a fever before the thermometer reads it.
Proficient in de-escalating toddler rage.
Mastery of silence? That's actually a huge part of it. Restraint.
Knowing when not to do something.
He argues that's the peak of this expertise, knowing when to step in versus when to hold back, knowing when presence matters more than words.
Right. Knowing that you can't fix a scraped knee or a broken heart, but knowing that just staying there matters.
And you have to constantly update the software.
Because the kid keeps changing.
Right. Care repeats because need repeats. But the needs change shape. You finally master the swaddle, and then they need to learn to sleep alone.
You master the toddler tantrum, and suddenly you're dealing with teenage silence.
Maltha writes, independence appears in one area and disappears in another. The physical load might lighten, but the emotional load often gets heavier.
Care adapts, but it does not end. That's the heavy truth. It just shapeshifts.
And that shape-shifting can be really disorienting.
Okay, so this leads us into the emotional core of the essay. And I have to say, he says some things here that feel, well, a little controversial, especially about love.
He really challenges the cultural narrative. We're sold this idea that love is a constant state of joy and delight.
The cherish every moment crowd.
Right. But Mala argues a lot of parental love doesn't look like that. He says love often lives inside care as steadiness rather than feeling.
Steadiness rather than feeling. I feel like that line is going to upset some people. That sounds so dry.
I know, but think about what he means. He's not saying the joy isn't there. He's saying the joy isn't the structure. Joy is the weather. Care is the climate. He says love in this field is expressed through return rather than delight.
Return.
It's staying rather than celebration.
Okay, when you put it that way, return, that hits home. It's the showing up. It's the fact that you are there, again, to make the lunch, to sign the form, to listen to the same complaint about the math teacher.
Exactly. It's the long, boring work of keeping someone safe enough, fed enough, held enough, but we don't celebrate the thousands of hours of simply being there.
It's the difference between a wedding and a marriage.
That's a great way to put it. And Mala warns us, when we don't acknowledge this, that's when things get dark. He talks about the danger of invisibility.
This is crucial. What happens when this field goes unrecognized?
If you don't name care as a continuous structural condition, the weight of it starts to feel like a personal failure.
You start thinking, why am I so tired? Why am I so on edge? I must be doing something wrong.
Right. You internalize the structural load, and that's where care begins to harden.
Hardened into what?
Into vigilance that never rests, or into resentment. And resentment is the big taboo, but it stems from this lack of boundaries. When care is unnamed, it seeps into every moment.
It's like a gas filling the room. If you don't build a container for it, it just takes up all the available space.
And it's lonely.
Yeah.
That's another hard truth he brings up. So much of it happens internally.
The invisible ledger.
Yes. Others see the actions, the school run, the dinner prep, but they don't see the worry. They don't see the mental simulation of the future. Even two parents sharing care carry it differently.
Oh, that's the source of so many arguments. I did the dishes, so we're even.
But the other person is thinking, yeah, but I've been worrying about whether our toddler is developing a speech impediment for the last 6 hours. They're both carrying a heavy load, but on different frequencies.
So it's hard to compare notes. And that contributes to the loneliness.
You feel like you're holding the world up, but you're the only one who knows how heavy it is.
Okay, so this is all, I'm not gonna lie, it sounds pretty bleak. If I'm listening to this in my car, I might just drive into the ocean. But he does pivot at the end.
He does.
He asks, essentially, what do we do with this? If care is a permanent condition, if it's gravity, how does recognizing that actually help us? Because naming gravity doesn't make me lighter.
No, but it stops you from trying to jump to the moon and wondering why you failed. Mullah's answer is surprising. Naming it gives it shape.
It creates a boundary.
It allows you to say, this is what I'm holding. To say, this is why my rest doesn't restore me. And he insists that relief comes from accuracy, not resolution.
That distinction, accuracy versus resolution, is huge. We're always trying to solve parenting. We want to hack a schedule, a gadget that fixes the exhaustion.
But he's saying you can't solve the fact that another life depends on you. That's a reality to be lived. When you name it, you stop arguing with it.
You stop the internal gaslighting.
He writes, when care is clearly seen, it softens not because it reduces, but because it is no longer resisted.
Which allows for what he calls moments of lightness without guilt.
And moments of heaviness without panic. If you feel heavy, you don't have to spiral. You can just recognize, oh, this is the weight of care. This is the condition I'm in.
He also touches on what happens as the kids grow up. Because I think there's this fantasy that one day you cross a finish line, confetti falls, and the care stops.
Malaha gently dismantles that fantasy. He talks about late-stage care. He says it thins and it moves further away from the body, but it doesn't disappear.
It transforms into a quieter, more distant presence.
The body is no longer on high alert in the same way, but the heart remains oriented toward that other life. You still carry concern, hope, and watchfulness.
It moves from the nervous system to the soul.
In a way, it becomes less immediate, but more existential. You're still the safety net.
It's interesting because, again, honesty seems to be the antidote. Expecting it to end completely sets you up for disappointment.
Exactly. Malha concludes with a thought that I think every caregiver needs to hear. He says care doesn't ask to be admired. It doesn't need to be framed as noble or saintly.
It just needs to be understood as real.
Yes, as something that shapes time, attention, and energy in predictable, physical ways.
It reminds me of the line where he says, care isn't what parents do, it's where they live.
It is the atmosphere that forms around years of being needed. That's the takeaway. It's an environment, not a task list. You are the environment.
This deep dive has really shifted something for me. I think I've spent so much time looking at the verbs, the driving, the cooking, and wondering why they don't add up to the exhaustion I feel. But looking at the field, the background hum, it makes so much more sense.
It validates the invisible labor. And ultimately, he says that seeing it clearly does not make it easy, but it makes it honest. And honesty in this field is often the closest thing to rest.
Honesty is the closest thing to rest. That is a powerful place to land. It means we can stop pretending we aren't tired.
It stops the fight against reality. And sometimes, stopping the fight is the only rest you get.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Pedro Malha's The Architecture of Care, I want to leave you with a question to carry with you. If honesty is the closest thing to rest in the field of care, what part of your own mental load have you been treating as a personal failure rather than a structural reality? What would change if you simply named it as care, stopped fighting it, and just let it be?
Something to think about.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.